All right. Hello. Hello. Becky, is that you? Is that you, Becky Burke?
Art,
It is.
I don't go get him. It's Art Byram.
Where you been?
Whoa. I've been I I've been here sitting
Yeah.
on Zoom waiting around, just putting my headphones on, just staring at an empty screen.
Oh my God. It's been weird, right?
It has been weird.
So, like, I mean, constantly, it's like every freaking day I wake up and I get the stack of emails and the phone messages and the people lined up, the protesters
Like,
out
bro,
in
yes.
front of the Belly of the Beast Coast, the headquarters in Glastonbury, Connecticut.
And the good thing is, from what I hear, is that the only way that you've been able to manage it is that the driveway is so technical that they haven't been able to get down there. So at least they're on the street.
It
Like they
is
haven't
correct.
actually picketed right up to the window.
Nobody's risked that because most of them can't find the passageway. They can't quite find the line. They run right up to the edge of it and then they jam on the brakes, stand up on their toes, and like, I'm not. I can't. I don't know. Don't think I can do it.
Yep.
So it is. It's been pretty crazy. But it's been, I guess it's been. God, when did we start this again? Or initially?
When the wait, the first time? Like the
Yeah,
beginning?
yeah. Like back in.
So back this all started back in 2018.
Mm,
And back in 2018, there were some monumental things happening in the US that
oh
the
yeah.
world actually took notice of. Remember, there's the salmonella outbreak. There
Yep.
was the end of the
Ebola too.
longest, yep, the end of the longest government shutdown in history.
Huh.
Remember, the first American woman went to go get them and win the Boston Marathon in 33 years. Of course, we're talking about the one and only Des Linden.
Des Linden. And
And
what happened was she
and
actually won the Boston Marathon and then decided after winning the Boston Marathon that there wasn't much else that she could do to improve her lot in life except
well, before she did it, there was the huge beginning of an error called the Cultra Trail Running Podcast.
oh, yes.
And it was
Yes.
it was after that that she said, "What else is there for me to do? I've won
Yeah.
the Boston Marathon, and all of these things are happening around here. Salmonella, government shutdown, Culture Trail Running Magazine, Culture Trail Running
Magazine.
Podcast and stuff.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Well, that you're just
so we're
referring to
gonna,
they keep trying to turn us into a magazine, those freaking
I know that's
Canadians,
it,
right?
Canadians.
The trail
And
fishers.
yeah. So and then she decided that, she was gonna go and join us. And
Yeah.
and now look at it. It's you know, I mean, what's crazy is back then in
Mhm.
2018,
That was some
if you
political crazy
remember,
shit happening, right?
yeah,
Like
like remember
really crazy
Donald
stuff.
Trump was the president back then, which is crazy that he was the president. Like,
That's
what were we
insane.
thinking? And
Yeah.
now here we are, 8 years later, and so much has changed.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Well, that actually hasn't changed. It changed and then it went back. So a lot of things did change. And
Yeah.
then they
Yeah.
then they then they then they changed again. And just like Cultura. Cultura was here and we're changing it up, but in a good way,
That's right.
in a
If you think
positive way.
if yes, and if you think about it, 90 days ago, at least 90 days ago, we decided to pause our episode, right? And
Yeah.
then 60 days ago, we decided to start our episodes up again. But we kept forgetting to hit record. So it's
It
been a challenge. Okay. The challenge is real. We have to be all
is.
retrained and shit. And it's pretty bad.
We've
But
done a lot of talking. We've
yeah,
done a lot of preparing. We've
yes,
probably
yes.
done a lot more preparing for this than maybe some races that we've both run together. I
Yeah.
feel like
That's not
I
saying
don't I don't
much.
know. I know that really isn't. It doesn't say much for
Yeah.
the races or
Yeah.
maybe even for this. So scratch
Gotcha.
that.
Hey,
Scratch that. Yeah.
let's talk about what is going to what
What's
we're going to
happening?
do now. Yes, because so we're starting the podcast up, but it's a little bit different, right?
Yeah,
So what are
it
we going to
is.
talk about? Tell us what we're going to talk about, Beck.
So we are going to wait a minute. We're going to talk about all the fun and crazy shit that happens on the trails and in our lives that most people don't care about or won't talk about.
That's right.
Dun
So
dun
yeah,
dun.
so we want to have all the fun, but we want to dig a little bit deeper, right?
We want to get into more shit.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like going deeper, right?
That's what she said.
There you
Wait,
go.
that would be what he said?
I don't know. I
They
think
take
both
over.
they probably both said that actually.
They
So,
probably yeah, they did.
right?
Yeah. Okay.
That's something it's called common ground, something we can all agree on. So, you know. So yeah, so I think that we're looking to have we're looking to discuss life as viewed through the lens of ultra running, you know, and so we're still going to talk about all the fun shit that happens on the trails, but I think we're going to dig, we're gonna dig maybe a little bit deeper than we did in the past. So
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
like it.
yeah, I'm super excited to do this. I think there's a possibility too that there'll be some other formats, having some other hosts coming on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we're going to
The
kind of
host with the
see.
most.
That's right. We're going to see how it how all that rolls out. But for now, we're excited to release our first episode, right? Our first episode after hitting pause.
Yes. Which ironically we hit pause and then I sort of with this episode hit I don't know, would you say I hit pause? I don't even know what I hit.
I
But I screwed up. So I am actually not part of that because I got everything confused and I got overwhelmed. And so yeah.
Yeah, no,
So
that's
such is life, which we will talk about.
yeah. So I think that for the most part, Becky and I are going to are going to co-host the episodes together. And sometimes we're going to have guests and sometimes we're not. And, sometimes like this first episode that we're going to, that you're going to listen to now, that you're contractually required to listen to, is one with a guy that Becky and I both met at the at Lake Waramaug 100K. So
Also known as the Tolerable Bill race. And it's a
yes,
tolerably wonderful race.
yeah, and
So
so we had the aid station there, and
we were flinging pizzas.
yeah, it was a
We
great time. We had Sandy
were flinging
Barbells
tents.
there, Mark Kelly, we had Gandalf, we had Ultra Walker, we had who else? We had Gators. Lila was running by. There were so many runners that we knew running by.
Yeah, it was really
Justin
exciting.
Kowski and everything. It was wonderful. So
It was.
so in this episode,
And
a guy, Lynn, that I got a chance to run a lap with, and he got the full exposure to the Art Byram Ultra pep talk bullshit. Let's kind of warp the way that we look at this world and get through it, and it all made a lot of sense. So
did 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 that start? Wait, did I start running with him first and then I went to use the bathroom and then we got separated?
um
Or
no,
because I had done a lap at that point when
yes.
we ran with him,
Mhm.
I'd already done a lap.
You did
And
one.
then I
You
think
did.
I had finished and then he had come in and then I think he was doing some of his nonsense talk,
Yeah,
which
you and I were going to run. You would finish one lap, and then I said, oh, I'd love to pay somebody in again or do something like that. Cause, in the past, Laura Becker, I ran with her last year. I did a loop with her last year. And then Lynn had said hi a couple times, mentioned that he listened to her show. And
each lap that he came around, we were
you and
just more jovial and
that's right.
Giving him a harder and harder time.
That's right. And you and I just started running, and then it coincidentally, he came up and
we all started running together.
Yeah, he made the fatal mistake of talking to us. Then we sought out to break him. So
exactly. Well, I sort of did. I stopped because I wanted to get a picture of the two of them. I think I had to tinkle too.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I think there was tinkling involved.
There was tinkling involved. There was tinkling involved. And then, I had known that Lynn was tired and was kind of like, oh, and so all of a sudden, not to be giving anything away, but then I'm saying we with air quotes started to run with him, but you and he just got farther and farther ahead. And
yes,
I knew I could tell from looking that Art was doing a lot of talking and Lynn was doing a lot of listening. And I was like, Art has either gotten Lynn to have a second wind, or he's completely broken the man, and the man is going to fall across you can't break the line.
Lynn can't.
He's unbreakable.
Did you see his fucking calves? Did you see his calves?
Who didn't? You can see those from space.
Those, I may just highlight those calves. That might be the show picture. I'm going to actually do that as the teaser. The calves are the teaser.
Yeah.
So,
but we could have a whose calves are these?
Okay. Yes.
Name those calves.
No.
Okay. Sorry. Go on.
Nobody has calves like that. Listen, I don't want to. We just said that we were going to go deeper, and here we are, like fucking chatting away. Like,
I know. We need to not do that.
Okay. So we're going to get to the point, which is fucking remarkable. And I hope you guys. Becky is not on this episode, which is a major detriment, but still listen anyway. Okay. Because we promise she will be back at the next episode of the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. And by the way, we miss the hell out of you guys, right?
We do.
Yeah. So
I don't have words to describe how much everyone means to me, and how much I'm glad to be back and to be back with all of you. To be back with you, Art.
That's right. It's just, there's no place like home.
From the belly of the Beast Coast, Glastonbury, Connecticut, this is the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. We talk about all the fun shit that happens on the trails that most normal people don't care about. The language we use is f***ing explicit and raw, like the trails we run on. So don't listen with your kids! No kids. Cultra is brought to you by Patreons and supporters, and we are 112% listener supported, and support is good.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. I'm your host, Art Byram, and I am joined today by a special guest. And this is our new format, which I believe at this point, Evil Becky and I will have explained. I probably should have checked with our guest tonight to make sure that I pronounce his name right, but I tend to fuck these things up anyway. So I'm going to just lean into it hard. So we have Lin Zhuo.
Oh, actually, you're pretty close, pretty accurate, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is that, could you pronounce your whole
name? All my friends in the States, and we can talk about that. I'm from, originally from China, so it's Mandarin, right? All my friends here in the States would pronounce my last name as Zhao, like just exactly you pronounce it.
Okay.
But in Mandarin, it's Zhuo. So it's similar to like draw a picture, draw.
Okay.
Yeah, I go by Ling Zhao here.
Okay, very good. Okay, Lynn. Well, so glad to have you here. I think that things in life are much more exciting when they're brand new and when you're exploring new areas. So you and I met, I guess, you and I met at the Lake Waramaug.
That's right.
race there, and Cultra had an aid station there. So, and you were there not only running the race, but also representing Mount to Coast. So we're going to talk to that. We're going to talk about that, and you and I got a chance to run a little bit together. Shared probably like around 7 miles with each.
That was a lap saved
together.
Saved my race. So
yes.
Thank you for that.
Oh, the pleasure was mine. So I think that, I'd like to get into that, and then just to also give a preview. I guess we also want to talk about maybe your other, some of the other things that you do in life. So we'll get through all that. But I thought that maybe we could kind of start out from the basics. Now, right now you live in Long Island City, Queens, right?
That's right.
Okay, very
Where
good.
you used to work, right?
Yeah,
we talked about that.
Yes, yeah. So maybe we could start with, I always like to find out, it's great to see everybody where they are today, but lots of times we're informed by learning where they came from. So maybe you could kind of tell us where you were born and what briefly what your childhood was like, and things like that.
So like I said, I'm from China originally. I was born and raised in Shanghai. It's kind of a coastal city, similar to New York City, very like metropolitan city. I was born in the late 80s, grew up in the 90s there, where the China at that time, the economy was growing because it's opening up. There are a lot of opportunities to connect with the rest of the world, no matter it's be trade or education, or all things are being flowing. So I grew up in a very kind of like open and kind of period of time in China, in Shanghai particularly. And there were a lot of like expats working in Shanghai at the time. Actually, you will be surprised that like every building, they'll have like an English teacher, or have an expat living in the area. So I inspired to sort of like travel far and sort of like study in the US at some point. And my parents, they're like typical middle class. My dad is an engineer, my mom is an accountant. So they like lots of like Asian parents or Chinese parents,
Sure.
they pay heavily attention on my schools, right? So made sure I get good grades, and then I applied for school in the States. I went to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, and that's how I came to the States, right?
Very good.
And the first time, I still remember, like most of the kids here in the States, they probably have their parents showing them for college visits. For me, it was just like some online research and trying to see, okay, oh wow, this name sounds better than others.
Sure.
And that's how I landed in Baltimore, the greatest city in America. Like that's the first thing I noticed on the bench. If you've ever been to like Inner Harbor, you've seen those benches by Inner Harbor. It
Yes.
says the greatest city in America. I said, wow, I must be at the right place.
You landed, right?
Yeah. It was great because I think Maryland, or Baltimore particularly, is very similar to Shanghai in the sense of they're both like close to the harbor, and the weather is mild, and it's very, very like kind of laid back culture in a way. So I liked it a lot. Had a great time there. And then after graduation, I moved to New York, New Jersey area, started working in finance industry. I was in banking for a brief time, and then I started my career in financial data service particularly, and it's been my whole career life. And then recently, because I started running about 6 years ago, actually end of 2018. I'm pretty sure that's when Cultra started, right? And end of 18.
Yes.
19,
Yeah.
Beginning of 19. So
yeah.
I started running at that time, just like 5K, 10K. Eventually led to like half or marathon.
Gotcha. Oh, before we get into that, I just want to so did you have any brothers or sisters growing up, or?
No, single child. I
Okay.
think when I was like my generation is still the single child policy
Yes.
was still enforced in China at that time. I think later in the 90s it got loosed up, and now there's no restriction. But yeah, for my generation, my peers, it's only like single child.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
did you feel like there was extra pressure because of that? Meaning that like we got one shot here, Lynn, it's all on you, baby.
I didn't know the difference, to be honest with you,
Sure.
right? I
Yeah.
just feel like that's the norm.
Yeah.
But now I have like a lot of friends here. I often talk about because I think part of me growing up, I always had this thoughts like, what if I have a sibling? Like, how would it feel like? And
Mm.
would it be different? Um, so I start to get answer from, I have a lot of cousins who were born here and trying to understand from their perspective. Um, I think if just myself, I think my parents are still pretty relaxed. They,
Hmm.
as long as like I'm being a good student, they're not too pushy. But the good thing is like, I get all the resources,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no competition or, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting how that is when you say that was your normal. I think that's how it is for a lot of us. Like
yeah.
when I grew up on a farm in a town that wasn't so much a farm town.
Hmm.
So but it took me a while before I realized that there were kids living in the suburbs who didn't have to work all weekend and who weren't like having to dig ditches and feed animals every morning and get eggs and cut hay and
You would thought that was just
work in the garden.
normal life, right? You thought
Yeah,
just like that's normal childhood.
that's right. And I thought that like everybody's parents got drunk too. So that was my normal until all of a sudden you start to say, wait a minute,
Yeah,
there's other things to do in life. And this is, I think you find out, everything's fine until it's compared, until you're comparing it to other things. And then
right.
you find its essence is how it relates to other things. Right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, I could see that maybe that didn't feel like that much pressure because like, hey, that's just the way it is. Like,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is, there's some comfort in that. And then it's also, there's always some, I think that lots of times people look back and try to second guess and try to, try to really process childhood because,
yeah,
it's in a lot of ways, it's what makes us,
yeah.
or influences us certainly. So,
And Ara, I had to, add on to what you just said. I think I start to process a lot of this. Now I become a father, right? Now I'm a father of my son. I start to sort of like going back to my sort of like original story, like childhood, trying to get some of the answer that how can I
mm.
be a parent, sort of like mirror that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is so true. Is that I think you're right. It's all fine and good until you have your own kids, and then all of a sudden, you're brought back to your childhood again.
Yep.
It can be the greatest thing ever. But then there is some, all of a sudden you start. For me, I found myself speaking to my kids and hearing my parents.
Yeah.
Like not under my roof, and
Yeah.
you know all those kind of things. So um all right, so when you came, there must have been, was there a further adjustment in relating to the world once you traveled to the US? Was it your first time in the US when you came here for school, or had you visited
Yeah,
here?
it was first time.
Hmm.
I had some uncles, aunts, who who are here, and they will travel back to Shanghai every summer, to see me. So I get some connection, but to actually going to study here was the first time I ever be in the States.
Mm.
Yeah.
That must have been that had to have been scary though, right? Because you're not like I mean, were you scared coming over here, or certainly like,
Actually,
how did that feel?
not at all. Growing up, I watched a lot of like American movies and shows. I thought
Uh-huh.
like that's just what America is.
Mm.
But then of course, I picked up different nuances, different, new nuances about different cultures, different regional characters. But I think, it wasn't a big shock to me when I first landed, and it was pretty similar to how I expected in a way. And I think maybe I got lucky because people I met in general were pretty nice to me, and
Yeah.
I roommate with all my roommates. They're pretty. They show me like not just like the like how to pick up language, but also like the cultural things of side of things. So I
Yes.
consider myself pretty lucky for that.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because I know a lot of times, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
So I'll tell a quick story. Is one time I was visiting Egypt, touring Egypt with my wife, and we went to the Suez Canal, and we bumped into somebody walking along the canal, and struck up a conversation with him and said, yeah, we're, and you don't tell people from New Jersey, you tell them you're from New York, just because they'll know where you're talking about, right? So and he heard we were from New York, and he was like, oh my God, like, aren't you scared? Like, there's people just getting shot all over the place, and it's so violent, and you must get out of there before it's dark. And all these, all these other things that that he was concerned about with New York, his understanding of what it was. And then I was talking to him, and he said, oh yeah, I'm an attorney. And in my like thick skull, I'm thinking, oh my God, there's attorneys in Egypt. Like, in my mind, like, just like stereotypes pop up. And that's like, I imagined that there were, but I just, at that point, it didn't occur to me to do that. So it was shocking how much what a valuable conversation that was for both of us, I think.
I think that's a great example. I couldn't think of any specific example, but I think I agree with you in terms of like if you travel a lot and you see more people, and you will realize actually it's not that different. Sure, there are definitely cultural nuances and different customs, but then by the end of the day, it's not that much of difference.
Correct. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. People couldn't do enough for us there. People went out of their way who we would just try to communicate. People who didn't speak English at all helped us get on buses, helped us load our luggage, helped us get a seat in a massive crowd, and just did
actually. One thing is like, because I told you I watched tons of American shows and movies before coming to the States. One show I watched was actually The Wire, and it was about Baltimore, right?
Yeah
And then like, if you only think Baltimore is what The Wire depict, right?
Oh,
of course, you would think that's not the greatest city in America.
Shit.
Right? Exactly. That's East Baltimore, right? That's not a fair representation of the whole city. So my experience there was entirely different. So that's just example to say, okay, you need to really be like, experience that place, talk to the people to really to understand what it means.
Yeah. Right on. Well, we got a lot to cover, so I'm gonna drive us forward here. So you had mentioned Mount to Coast. Now, Mount to Coast was a sponsor of Lake Waramaug, which was very nice. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the company. Just some of our listeners are probably very familiar, probably run in your shoes and things like that, and others may not know what we're talking about. So tell us about Mount to Coast.
Sure. Yeah, Mount to Coast we're a very young company, right? We only started about 2 years ago, and last year we launched our road ultra shoes. We sort of like designed the performance footwear shoes based on this very niche target audience, which is the ultra runner. And I know like in the States, ultra to a lot of us is trail running. But like a lot of like if you see Europe or Asia, a lot of ultra runners actually run on the road. So actually our first products from Mount to Coast is actually road shoes. We have the R1, which is the road racing model. Then we have the S1 and P1, who are the trainers. P1 has a little bit more stability elements to it. So this year we are expanding to the trail kind of trail models. We have 2 trail models coming up. One is more technical for long run. It's called T1. It's coming up actually beginning of next month, end of this month. And we'll have a more road to trail shoes coming later this year. So yeah.
Okay. Oh, very good. Very good. So, all right. So it is a niche market within a niche market, right?
Yeah.
And so that's good. I mean, if you can go in there and make an impact, I think that's a wonderful thing. I love that kind of running myself, things like timed races, right?
Yeah, because like, I know you run trails, but a lot of times probably you still train on the road as well, right? So you need a pair of road shoes for like daily miles.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even, I guess like as folks get older, not that I'm getting older, okay?
No, you look 25.
But lots of times people do go to there's lots of timed events that are on on non-technical trails, where or maybe there's a section that's technical but not the whole thing, things like hamster wheel, things like notch view, the races in the New Jersey Trail Series, some of the New Jersey Trail Series, like the days at the fair, and and also like comrades, So there's certainly a long history of of great ultra road races. You're right though that a lot of focus does get put on the trails, and that's fine. I just have found like I just love like running no matter where it is and no matter what it is. I'm even probably going to try a track race this summer. I'm looking at one. So
yeah, that's cool. Is there any particular race you're looking at now, or
yeah, there's I think there's one in Portland that I might be up for.
Nice.
Portland, Connecticut. So smaller deal, but
very nice.
It should be fun. So we'll we'll see if that works out in the schedule. So how did you first hear about Mountain Coast?
So like I said, I started running about 6 years ago, and mainly running marathons. And I think Art, when we run in Lake Waramaug, you mentioned that you were starting marathoning, you're trying to get Boston time, right? And then you gradually sort of getting into ultra running. And you were pretty fast. You qualified for Boston, back in the days. For me, I hit my wall pretty early on, right? For me, that was like 3:30 marathon. And I just feel like, okay, no matter how much time I put in there, I plateaued, right? And I think, this is like, I want to try something different. And the ROI for training the marathon PR is just not there. And I discovered ultra about, I want to say maybe 3-4 years ago. Yeah. About like,
gotcha. Yeah.
And at that time, the founder of Mountain Coast, it was thinking about to sort of like putting this company together. And something I forgot to mention earlier is the company is from Hong Kong. So most of the team are in in China, but we also have our teams here in the States. So I got to know the founder of Mountain Coast, and we start chatting, and he said, okay, we want someone to help us on the States, right? On the marketing side in the States. And that's how I got involved in Mountain Coast. He sent me a pair of shoes. I instantly loved the products, and then started become part of the company here.
Gotcha. Oh, great. That's great. And there's some other people that our listeners are familiar with that have also taken to are also involved with Mountain Coast, including Cole Crosby, who has been on the show several times. So
yeah, who was also at the Lake Waramaug this year.
Yes, yeah, it was nice to see him there. Let's see. So And also, so I also want to just talk a little bit about Bloomberg. And so you work for Bloomberg Financial right now, isn't that right? Like,
Yeah,
mhm.
in the data side.
Gotcha. Okay. Have you found, so I have some head scratchers for you, and you might say, Art, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah,
Many guests before you
highly likely. Yeah.
have had the same reaction. So I wonder if there's any parts of the financial world that you can relate to ultra running that you've seen where there might be things like that. Are there any parallels? Um, you know, one that I thought of maybe might be like startup businesses, and ultra runners. It just, I was listening, like sometimes I get so obsessed about running. So I'm sitting there watching the Bloomberg Financial TV, station.
Yeah. I know
watching
you're a
that
fan.
crank out, and they're talking about I think they had somebody talking about, setting up capital for companies and people who are starting their own businesses. And, you hear the stories of the entrepreneurs, and they go out and they beat the street and try to, they have confidence in themselves. They know they can do it, but everybody else says they're crazy. And they talk to people and they're like, basically the entrepreneurs go out there and say, I want to run 100 miles. And people say, I can't fucking drive that far. What are you kidding me? That's not going to work. And then, and then they go and they assemble a team to help support them. And then all of a sudden, they get it together. And, it just sounds, a startup business a lot of times sounds like an ultra running experience in a lot of ways.
No, I think that's a good analogy, right? In terms of, setting up the goal, and, it might sound crazy, but for startup or for a super long ultra distance, right? It's doable. Like a lot of people say, oh, never gonna run 100 miles. Like right now, I've done my first 100K at Lake Waramaug. I still will think 100 miler is out of my reach, right? But then I know one day I still want to go for that goal, and it's reachable, but I just got to put in the work. So to answer your question, I guess, Art, I think one thing I can find similarity for financial world and ultra running is setting the goal, like you said, but also heavily rely on data to help you reach that goal, right? Because I think in ultra running, a lot of people would just say, oh, these people just running circles and, running for long distance. They're just have a great endurance, but there's so much behind it, right? There's so much data to it. There's heart rate, there's nutrition, there's, all kinds of elements. And you see and it's not only for the elite runners. I think for every ultra runners, you need to figure out your data, what's your formula to achieve that goal. And if one component within that doesn't work out, it can cost you a race. The smallest detail can cost you the race. And this is very similar to how I can see in the financial world as well, right? A lot of the decision, sure, you can see it might be a lot of millions and even billions of dollars at stake. But then the decisions heavily rely on data, sometimes historical data, try to forecasting the future. But by mastering the pattern, by mastering the formula, you can reach the goal eventually. So I think that's I'm sort of trying to steal your analogy and try to expand on it.
I think you're building on it, actually, because as I'm hearing you say that, you're right. It's not just about the elites, and certainly they're counting down to the, they're counting down to the calorie and to the gram, what their carb intake might be for a certain section of the course. But we can use the same data to be successful in our own endeavors. If you have a basic idea of, how many calories you typically consume or what you need, what you're able to process. And, when I did an FKT, I built a spreadsheet, right? And said, okay, I think worst case scenario, it's going to take me this long. I have this many hours and I need this many calories per hour. And then based upon that, I have to decide. I need some options because I'm unsupported and I can't rely on anybody to give me food or anything like that. I'm going to be out in the middle of the woods, and I have to carry it. So, what do these different foods? How many calories? To get 300 calories. I think at the time I was calculating, 300 to 400 calories an hour. So
per hour.
How many?
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. How many Swedish fish do I need to eat per hour to get this? My old strategy would have been just take all the food you can fit and throw it into your pack, and then your pack's too heavy, right? But you're going to be like, because you're panicking and you're nervous about this thing. But if you go to the data and you work it backwards, you don't
figure out
your
formula. You figure out your formula basically.
You do. And as we all know, like, you're going to get punched in the face and your plan's going to go to shit, and you're going to have to change something, but
readjust your model and exactly.
But I think, I think that is, that's in a lot of ways, that's how business goes too, right? You don't know, you can only control what you can, and then be ready for, be ready to pivot as necessary. So,
100%. Yeah.
Very good. Maybe we could talk a little bit about, we had a great, first of all, I want to just give a shout out to Bill Odendahl, race director over at Lake Waramaug. He just did a wonderful job with the race. I think this was the best race that I've been involved with there. It's been getting better every year. It's grown, and I think you guys brought a lot to that too. You brought some extra runners in too, right? You brought some of your
and then, like,
you could talk about that.
No, Bill is like, I think first of all, like, I want to echo what you just said. I think Bill poured his heart out for this race. I think from, like, honestly, for the whole 100K, I didn't even need to carry my water bag, my vest. All the aid stations are so well stocked. All the volunteers are so dialed in. And I have to say, Cultra aid station is my favorite, but all the aid stations, that's
the right answer right there, Lynn. I think we can wrap it up right now.
Yeah, we can close. Yeah, let's call it now. Yeah.
Hear that, JJ?
But I think like one thing before, so I met Bill on the race day, right? And this was the first time meeting him. Of course, I've heard about his story before. I heard about his name on the Cultra podcast before. But meeting him on the morning of, and he didn't know I was running, right? He thought I was just there to help out Monte Coast. And then he saw me just like, remove the jacket, start to, towing the line. He was like, wait, you're running? I was like, yeah, this is my first 100K. I'm going to try it. And he was like, this is the place to do it. You got to make it today. It was like, oh, wow. Right. Well, he's like, he's more excited he was more excited than myself. It just, that gave me a lot of energy.
And you told him, you said, Bill, look at my calves. Do you think I can't do this? Look at these calves. So for the listeners out there, Lynn has, this guy has calves that you've just never seen calves like this. Okay. So
guys, sorry, you have to just use your imagination now.
That's right.
But hopefully one day, you can give me a nickname, and it's something to do with my calves.
Okay. All right. That's we will get to work on that one. So,
but yeah, going back to your question earlier, Bill was gracious to allow a few of our Monte Coast athletes to be there, including Sierra DeGraff, who is one of our sponsored athletes. She's based in Vegas, actually, in Nevada. And this is her first East Coast race. That's her debut. And she won the race, and I think she had a new course record by I think 25 minutes, which is phenomenal. And the record was shattered. Yeah.
No, that was rather impressive. And I think Lila Gaudreau came in shortly after her, or a little bit after her. So both, and Lila was also, I believe, under the course record but obviously not,
No, Lila is great, and I've actually been chatting with her after the race, and I think
yeah.
she's having such a bright future, being so young, and she passed me a few times during the race. She just always looks
Oh
so
yeah.
happy during the race.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great energy. Yeah,
No, she is an absolute gem of the Beast Coast.
yeah,
She lives. I mean, she's so brave. She lives in Maine, and doesn't. She's not even afraid of the gators there, or any of that. So she's
not
yeah,
afraid of snow, not afraid of
yeah. No, she's
gators. Yeah, yeah.
she really does a great thing, and always has a great time, and generally runs very well too.
Yeah, and also I want to give a quick shout out to my colleague Doug Rosenberg,
Hmm.
who's also with Monte Coast. He ran with me for the first 3 laps. We just he just pulled me through for the first half of the race, and it was a huge help. So shout out to you, Doug.
Yeah, so let's go. Let's talk about, so that support is awesome. Let's talk about the race in general for you. Now, your
Yeah,
previous longest race was a 50-mile, correct?
that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
what race was that?
That was the NYC Trail Fest.
Hmm.
It happened about, I want to say maybe 2 years ago. That was actually, it's called NYC Trail Fest, but it was actually in the Palace State Park in Fort Lee, New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah,
in which park in Fort Lee?
Palace State Park.
Oh, okay. Where is that now? I know where Fort Lee is. It's
So,
right at the George Washington Bridge.
exactly. So when you cross George Washington Bridge, that's where the park starts, and
Oh, that's
all the
right.
way towards north. A lot of
Yes.
people cycle, like ride their bikes there,
Yeah,
cycles there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry. The Palace. This is all the Palisades and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I hiked. There's some kind of a park further down, a campground, and I think I hiked that with the scouts one time
Right.
too. So
Yeah. And yeah, there was like a monster climb at the end of the race, something like that.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So anybody who knows the Palisades, those are just the huge, huge rock faces. Kind of looks like West Rock, I think, if anything. West Rock in Hamden, but the base is along the river. It's very, for the most part, non-technical, right? I mean, it's the trail's pretty tame, right, for the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
part.
Single file and trail. Yeah. Pretty
Mhm.
tamed. Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then the climb at the end is just a it's a probably a pretty steep climb. If it's like,
Yeah.
there's no easy way up that, I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
um okay. And then and then so you signed up for Lake Waramaug, and so standing at the starting line, how did you feel?
Actually, I didn't. So I feel like I was undertrained going to this race.
Mm.
Having a toddler at home was not great for ultra training, right? So I probably would just do daily mileage of 3 to 5 miles. So I
Hmm.
run commute every day, right? That's my daily miles, and then
Oh, okay.
on the weekend, I would just do maybe a couple long runs. So that's my training. Not very scientific. We just talk
You know
about,
what,
yeah.
though, doing a run every day, if
Mm.
you're running twice a day, right?
No, just one way because
Oh,
we don't have a shower in the office, so I
oh,
only
gotcha.
run on my way back. Yeah,
Oh, okay. So that's 3 to 5 miles.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Total. Yeah,
Okay. And okay, so but at least you're getting a run in pretty much every day,
correct.
and then the long run. So I think
Yeah,
that's better than spotty training, which we've all tried that too. So
yeah. And then from nutrition perspective, I was pretty naive. I just like everybody told me Bill does a good job for the aid station. So
mhm,
I didn't really prepare too much gels. I just trust the aid stations, and it worked
mhm.
out pretty well, actually. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So it's that's definitely something that takes some time to figure out.
yeah.
And you can really dive into that, like we said. So there's always time for that. So take us through maybe the first half. So you said you ran the first third with your friend from Mount Coast, right?
Yeah, so the race is 7 laps in total, right? So the first laps, my friend Doug was doing the 50K. So the first 3 laps we got to run together, and it felt pretty fast, honestly. I feel like, I didn't even have to look at my watch, and it's already end of it. So yeah, that just flew by.
Gotcha. And then after he left, how was that first lap without him there?
Yeah, I was not even the first lap, like first, like maybe half mile. I was like, holy shit. Like, I was like, there's still have to go. Like, it doesn't feel like, if I want to use like half marathon as an example for marathon distance, I already start to feel tired and stuff. And it's pretty spread out race, right? Because, it's pretty long course. So I don't see other runners. So you could feel a little bit like, lonely, left out right there.
Yeah. I could see that. So, and then, so we saw you come around. You were nice enough to say hi and kind of, the first,
I said it the first lap. Yeah. I said hi at the first lap. I was like, oh, Cultra A Station. I was looking forward to you guys. And I think I met, I think it was this Silas at that time, or
you saw, I know Sandy was there.
Sandy was there,
and then Sandy Barbells was there,
and then she was saying, "Oh, you want to meet R. Byron?" I was like, "R is here," and then we start talking, and then second lap we chat a little bit. I start talking to you about your sign. I love the sign you put there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the sign said, "I'll be so sad when this is over."
Yes.
So yeah, that's always a good it's a good mind fuck, right?
It's great. It's like, I'm in so much pain, but yes, 2 days later,
but when it's Monday or Tuesday and I'm in the office, and I'm thinking like, what am I doing today, man? I kind of wish I was back out on that course. That was fun.
That was exactly how I felt the Monday after.
Very good. Very good. And so then I guess like at some point, Becky, so did anything else happen, like bring us up until the point where we got onto the same lap? So like before that, anything else?
No. And then like that was my fourth lap. I was pretty like lonely by myself. And then I had a friend who his name is Terry, and we actually ran Chicago last year together. That was his first marathon. And I paced him to run his first marathon. And that was my first time pacing like someone for the first time for the marathon. And after the race, we both got pretty emotional. And then at that moment, we just feel like we became brothers, right? After the race. And then I told him about this race, just casually. And I think he mentioned about, okay, I will be there. I say, yeah, sure. I didn't really expect him to show up because, he lives in Brooklyn. The race is like 2 hours away. And somehow on the fourth lap, when I was running, and then I just like on the side of my eye, I saw there was a car driving really slow. I was like, okay, is this an annoying driver or what's the situation? And I look over, that was Terry rolling over his window and smiling at me. I was like, oh wow, he actually drove here, and we met up. He waited for me at the next aid station. We chatted for only 5 minutes, and he drove back. That just made me like, I kept thinking about, I kept thinking about that for the rest of the lap. It was like, this guy drove 4 hours and just to see me for 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes just carried me through, lonely lap.
Yeah, that support is great that we get, from people in the community. That is
that's amazing.
It's a great thing, and I'm sure that I'm sure that he felt good about it himself. So
I hope so. Yeah.
And then we started running. So you and I, probably like just probably within a quarter mile from our aid station, started running. So we ran most of that lap together, and we had you got the full Art Byram treatment in
That was amazing. I was like, that was like I was having a live podcast
No,
going on next to me, and yeah.
we had a great chat. And as a somebody who lived in New York, or New York, New Jersey area, we kind of touched base on that. And then as new parents, I get the fact that that's got to absolutely come first. And at the end of the day, the running is it's not that important. It's fun and everything, but you definitely need to have your priorities straight with that. So
I will say this, like one thing I really enjoyed from our conversation, Art, was I started listening to Culture pretty late. I know a lot of the followers has been with you guys for a long time. I started listening to you guys maybe sometime last year. It was when you guys did an interview with Amy Power.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I started following you guys at that time. So I was a late comer, right, for your show. So a lot of the details, a lot of insider jokes, I couldn't get it. But then like you were so patient about you are so patient for our conversation, right? You were listening to my side of story and you're sharing your story. It's like two strangers just hitting off on the topics, and it's like I knew that you're like a culture podcast. It's kind of big deal, and you're a legend, and
in my own mind, it doesn't.
But I just want to say like it just feel like a very natural like conversation. It could be happened anywhere, and we just happen to have that kind of like great chat.
I appreciate you saying that, and that's very much. That's the kind of connection that I just love to make with people, and but it definitely takes two people to do that. So, that was a great conversation. And then we got into something like, cause you mentioned to me, you made the fatal mistake of saying, because now this race, you have to remember, this is a 7.7 mile loop or something like that?
I think it says 7.5, but actual measure is 7.6 or 7.
Okay.
I think you're right.
So,
yeah.
As people are doing this, you have to go by the start finish line.
Yeah.
And one thing that they do is they make it easy to drop down in distance, right?
Yeah.
So that like you can
anytime during the race you can
anytime during the race, so you don't have to call your shot, which is very dangerous, right? That's the most difficult. That's like at that point you might as well be on a treadmill, because it's like I can get off anytime I want, pretty much
push the button.
That's right. You just hit that stop button or ups. Oh, look, the clip pulled the thing out and stopped the treadmill.
Exactly.
So I guess I'm done. I would have run, but I've had it where I've hoped for a broken ankle in the middle of a run. So you mentioned the fact that, I'm thinking about, I think I'm going to drop it next, when I get around and, drop down to 50.
Yeah.
And,
So like I was actually thinking about like before the race, I told you I was not I feel like I was not 100% prepared. So on the other side, there's not a lot of like ambition or expectation. I say, oh yeah, if it's not today, I can just drop to 50 miles, no biggie, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then I just casually mentioned to you, I was like, I'm thinking about maybe after this lap, we're close to 50 miler. I might just tap it, enjoy the barbecue. Or the pizza offered by URA station. And then you told me the sentence I still remember, and I probably will remember in all my future races.
What's that?
Something about accident.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I said, you're talking, so what are you talking? I think I like set you up like very slowly and very deliberately, as I've been known to do. So I said, Lynn, so what are you talking about doing at the next time you go around? And you said, I'm thinking about dropping down to 50. And I said, dropping, right? Is that the word? Dropping?
Yeah, dropping. Yeah,
I said,
dropping.
When we drop something, that's an accident. We don't drop things on purpose. That's an accident. Do we want to have an accident here?
Yeah.
So I just freaking tortured you with that for a little bit.
I
We
keep
just had
thinking about that. Yeah.
oh, it was fun. And it all made, it's good ultra logic. At the
Yeah.
time it makes a lot of sense. And it's like, yeah, when we drop something, we're not here to do something by accident. We're setting out with purpose today. So let's run this. We set out to run
Like I
100K.
said, yeah,
Let's talk about it and find out how we can, and if you want to have that happen, right? So
yeah, exactly.
And then we thought about it, and all of a sudden it kind of like occurred to us that like how you didn't have to think about this decision and make this decision a million times over. There was only one more moment of truth, right?
You told me about that, and that saved my race basically.
Gotcha. And what was that all about?
So I think it was almost the end of our fifth lap together, and we're entering the start finish area, which I can just drop there and call it 50 milers. And you were actually, we can see the start finish line there. You are pointing to me, say, Ling, you just do one thing, and I guarantee you will finish today. You will become a 100K finisher today. You just gotta do one thing. When you pass that start finish line, don't talk to anyone. Don't high-five your friends. Don't do anything. Just keep freaking going. Just keep going. And the minute you leave that start-finish aid station, you're going to finish 100K today.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Because you think about it, you're not going to quit. You're not going to run. You're not the guy who swam halfway across the ocean and decided he was too tired and couldn't make it, so he swam back.
Yeah.
Once you start that last lap, you're going to finish it. So
that was the last lap. That's
only
the
thing
last
to do
10K
is to get over that start finish line. And you did that, you did that. So that's congratulations to you. That was, I gave you a little pep talk, but that was 100% you. And that absolutely made my day there, watching you, knowing that by the time you left me, there was no doubt in my mind that, I knew you weren't going to like say, oh yeah, Art, I decided to drop. Like that wasn't going to fucking happen. You were like gonna go, like, So.
Yeah, I think by talking to you, I think your prep talk just make me want to get it. I think you asked me just now like how I feel before the race. I didn't have this feeling that I want to get it today. But after like your talk, I feel like there's like a fire in the belly, right? Just like I want it today. I want it now.
Yeah.
And
you would put the time. Here's the thing: is that like if I felt that like you were, not that I could tell, because I'm not a fucking doctor, but if I had felt that like you were injured or if there was any like concern at all, like I'm not going to push somebody to do something stupid. And if you really
remember I mentioned about the shoes.
If you said I have to go home. Oh yeah, you wanted to change your shoes, and we said no, right?
Yeah, you actually. I was like, I thought like maybe I should change shoes at the aid station and see. And it's like, change shoes? What? Change shoes? You wear fucking mountain coats. You're not changing shoes. There's no blood threading of your shoes right now. You're good.
Yeah. I was like, what kind of message is that going to send? You had to change shoes. No, you're going to you're going to stay in those shoes and run. And changing your shoes is like a great place to drop out. It's a tough, that's,
it's just all kinds of like thoughts in my mind. I think it's like, it's just,
And the mind, like the mind and body will work together to find, it will trick the shit out of you to try to get you to stop. That's what it's made to do. It's made to short circuit you and, do all that, but like with a couple easy, if you just break it down to a couple easy things, you can, which you did, it only came down to one moment of truth. Everything else was bullshit, right? Yeah. It was just like, get through this and, get through that start line, that one moment, and once you start that, you get there.
Exactly. And one thing I want to quickly add on to that is like, I want to run the last lap because during our conversation, we talked about Cole Crosby, right? And I know like he's a he was on the show. You guys like know each other very well, and you didn't get to meet him because he was, helping out at the start finish aid station, and you and Becky were always at the Cultra aid station. And I thought if I can just grab Cole quickly, and then he can run with me a little bit to your aid station, so you guys can get to meet. And that thought carried me through, that I want to let you guys just to have some FaceTime.
Yeah, that was nice. That was very nice. So let me ask you, so have you ever had to face other things in life that seemed that not that this seemed impossible to you? Because I don't think it was a hard sell on my part. I think it was all, you had everything you needed to do it. But have you ever faced something in life that seemed nearly impossible, that you were able to embrace the uncertainty and kind of press through on faith? Does anything come to mind like that?
I don't have a lot of like David Goggins stories, if that's what you're asking for. But I think one thing I want to say, very similar to ultra running in terms of trying to step out of the comfort zone, is actually just like raising the child, and especially raising the baby, right? And I think that goes to all the parents. I think it's not just the time you spend on raising the kid, right? It's actually any second, something could happen, and it'll break you,
Yes.
and that kind of
Vulnerability.
uncertainty, vulnerability is what I think I realized ever since I become a dad. And that's very similar to like ultra in terms of how you can be patient, how you need to be patient and work with the situation you are in. And a lot of time you have to let go the anxiety, just trust everything will work out in the end if you just follow a pattern or follow a certain procedure. And I'll give you an example, right? That was the Super Bowl this year, and it's a pretty bad example, but I'm okay to share that. So we had a pretty long day. I took my son, my wife, who went to upstate New York, went to actually Rockefeller State Park in upstate New York for a nice day. It was beautiful weather, and we planned the Super Bowl night. I've ordered a pizza. We got home, cleaned out everything, just cracked my beer, and I feel like, okay, I'm ready for the game. And I went to the bathroom, and the minute I shut the door, I heard there was a screaming outside from the door, and it was our baby. And I opened the door, and my wife was already outside and pick up the baby. It was like, what happened? It was like, oh, I jammed my son's finger inside the door, like for like a good 5-6 seconds. And it was like, at that moment, I feel like the sky was falling, like, because there was so much uncertainty. I was like, oh, did I just handicap my son?
Sure.
Like, because there was like a lot of thoughts in my mind and going through, and then the crying, I see the tears, and the baby was like all red, face all red, and the finger, it's very visual, like the finger is like a candy bar. It was like, oh, it's like, what I'm gonna do with this? And my wife was like, oh, we gotta go to the ER. And then I suddenly just like, we were planning to have a peaceful family night, and suddenly 1 second later, just because I stupidly shut the door too quickly, we end up in the ER. And then of course, there was like procedure. We end up like 3 a.m. in the morning, go home. Luckily, I think, babies have superpower of healing. I think human beings have superpower of healing. After 2 months, he's all fine now. But that is just like a moment made me realize that my life from now on with my son in my life, every moment, every second could be a possibility of the reoccurrence of that episode. I cannot avoid it. How I can cope with this is not trying to avoid it or bury my hand in the sand. It's just trying to understand what can I learn from this? How can I cope with this and provide a solutions to that? And in a way, I think ultra running is very similar as well. It puts you to very extreme situations, force you to make a decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's about, what you have, what you can work with. And sometimes it's about letting go your ego, letting go your emotions, and, something like that. So,
yeah, it's tough with kids. You don't, they're completely helpless, and it's beyond comprehension that they even survive, right? But like somehow they do. So there is a huge that in relationships, when you started talking about that, like I think that when I really decided to get married, like I had to all of a sudden it occurred to me that like each of us bring our own dysfunction into relationships, right? And our own issues into relationships. And in order to make something last for the long time, you can't not deal with your shit, right? You have to deal with your own stuff, and then you have to be able to accept the other person's shortcomings as well, and work together, and support each other. And that's such a it seems like such a long shot that that's even possible to happen. So, that's how I have felt,
So do you think do you think like from your experience is more like, a constant like work in progress, or you feel like there will be a mechanism, between you and your partner, eventually you guys will just follow this, and it's sort of like you can use as a guidance to solve all the issues?
I don't think that there's I think that it's a moving target personally, because I think that as a person, every 7 to 10 years, I'm a different person. If I look back at who I was 10 years ago, I can recognize that person, but I don't really know that person that well. If I look back 20 years, I can pick them out of a crowd, but I don't really understand who I was 20 years ago. Parts of me I do, but in general, I don't. So I don't really have any, I think differently, I act differently, I have different experiences, I have different priorities. So, it's also different that, I know that like, my wife and I, we work out issues that we have. And I'm not naive enough to believe that we have all of our shit together and that it is 100% resolved, or that it ever will be, because it's not. It's like not how life works, in my opinion. I think that there's always, there's always a struggle, and it's a beautiful struggle. And the same thing, just the fact that it's a it's the now I'm going to start sounding really poetic here or something.
Let's go.
So it's the antithesis of entropy. If you look at it, life is trying to drag us down. There's so much shit happening, in some ways, there's so much stuff going on in the world, and in, different things trying to get us to eat the wrong foods, to do the wrong things, to get tied up with what we should have, to be discontent, and to, and to make the wrong choices. But still, we still get through, and we still make good enough choices, right? And we connect with other people, not in a perfect way, but in a way that's good enough. And to me, that's like the existence of a higher power, or the proof of a higher power is the fact that we're able to proceed despite everything in the down to the smallest detail in the world that is going from the organized to the disorganized, yet we're able to push through as growth, in our relationships, in some parts of them. So
that's beautifully said.
It's it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about that, and kind of wondering in that. That's like, and that's something, actually, that concept is what I'd like the new podcast that we're doing to touch on more, because I think for me, that's some of the important shit in this world to me, trying to figure that out.
Yeah. And I think when we're running, when we get that kind of mental clarity, I think we can get those answers that we're seeking. And I think
Yeah.
running allows us to have that kind of, mental space and mental peace to seek these answers. And so I think for that, I thank running for that. Yeah.
Wow. And that is absolutely 100% true. That's one of the things I like most about running is that it gets you whatever it is, it jumbles. I can be in the worst freaking mood and somehow I go out and I do that run and I can come back and all of a sudden the world kind of makes sense again.
Yeah.
So
running is our happy place.
Yeah. No doubt about it. So that's great. Let's see. So I wondered, have you had any like pivot points in your life or things where your trajectory changed dramatically or anything like that? Or
Yeah. So I think I mentioned I started running about 6 years ago. I think growing up, I was not a athletic kid at all, right? I would play ball, but like basketball, but like I was more like kind of nerd, study. But like the reason I got into running was because at that point, so I was at that time I was working in China actually for Bloomberg. I was working tech sales, and I was a traveling salesperson. I travel a lot. Like 1 week I'll be in the city, and then I pack my life up for in the luggage and show up in the next city. And I start to feel like I lose control of my own life in a way that I start to gain weight and a lot of and I was like at that time also I was like coming out of from a broken relationship, right? So I start to sort of like indulge myself with a little bit more drinking and love, like I'm sort of like became aimless in life in a sense. And then I start at some point I looked myself in the mirror, right? I was like, okay, you look very different. Like you're out of shape. You don't look happy, right? And then I think no one told me to run actually. I didn't have a coach at that time. I didn't go for like a running club like today. I think it was just very instinct at that time. It was just like one day morning. It's like Forrest Gump in the movie. Like he just stood up from that chair and started running, and that's exactly happened to me. I started running, and no matter like all the cities I traveled to, I just ran in that city. And the more and more I fell in love with that feeling, right? And then my lifestyle, the whole lifestyle started change, become less kind of like I just feel like there's like you said, right? Sure, every day can give you a blow and sort of like drag you down, but then everything will be better after a run, and I can always count on that. And even for a bad run, like quote unquote bad run, it's still a good run. So that's, I think, that pivot point is when I sort of like having, you may call it like quarter life crisis or whatever. I think a lot of us experience that, no matter it be like relationship or like life, life give you kind of something, or like career or family. I think it's a coping mechanism from human being, to get like to start like running, and then and understand like, okay, seek them clarity from within, and not from outside.
Gotcha. Yeah. There is something like I do find, as much as I do like running with other people, I do need to take those runs by myself to get that to get something different. There's a different benefit that I get from running alone too.
Yeah.
So um so yeah, so I could see that would be so yeah, I fought with addiction and drinking, and I had a friend die that was just like a pivot point in my life that got me going a different direction, not running but other, just basically got me to do enough in life that I could to have like a spiritual awakening, I guess is the best way to put it, to get me into recovery and things like that. So have you had any like that pivot? Like, do you feel like things were kind of heading the wrong way prior to that, or where you were kind of getting nervous about your trajectory? Or
Yeah, so I think it's the feeling about I don't know. Again, today I still don't know how to categorize it.
Mhm.
Was that a minor depression at that time, or was it like anxiety? Was it so I couldn't feel that, I was happy, right? I couldn't feel like, okay, there was like something I was like, I excited wake up every day to do it. Sure. Oh, I have, I have a decent job.
Mhm.
I have family who love me. And you like, someone would ask me like, what else do you want? Right. You,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you're living the bubble. Like, what else do you want? But actually something like only yourself, that something's missing, which is like maybe your drive, your own mental clarity, like something you actually, um, you know, something is missing in your life. And
Mm.
I think at that point it was like I just couldn't feel that I'm happy, I'm content, right? And then I was always trying to consume more. And I think that is reflective in terms of the indulgence on alcohol, on fancy parties as well. And even the people I hang out with at that, my friend groups during that period of time was more like, party people, right? More
Mhm.
like glam boy kind of style. And I sort of need that kind of stimulus in my life to remind me that I'm living a good life, quotation life. I'm living a
Mm.
happy life. But by the end of the day, you still feel that you're not happy. You're lonely in a sense, right? You don't feel fulfilled, I think is the
Yeah.
word I was looking for. And then I start to think about, okay, I still think running is as physical as spiritual. Even sometimes to me, it's more spiritual than physical, right? I think running allow me to, sure, make me change my lifestyle, start to, live a healthier life. But more importantly is it gave me that kind of like discipline, that kind of like something I can hold on to. It's always something I can count on to.
Mhm.
And I can know that after a run, I will think clearer, and I'll be a more patient person as well. I
Mm.
don't have to rely on, consume more to feel happy, right?
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
just be happy with what I have. And
So let me
yeah,
ask you this, because
yeah,
I think that like a lot of us, especially after doing a bigger event, like a lot of times like our mental being or um, our mental status is kind of a pendulum, right?
yeah,
Um, and like when a lot of times you'll do a race like you just did, or something, and then a couple days after or a week after, the pendulum starts to swing the other way.
yeah.
And a lot of people kind of get the post race blues or
Blue,
anything
yeah.
like that. You ever does that ever
I
get you? I know
I
I that hits me all the time. So
I did. I think, that's how actually I was listening to another podcast this morning. I think it was a perfect kind of it's the perfect explanation for that. And, it's from AJW. Do you
Mhm.
know
Yeah,
Andy?
sure, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
Andy Jones Wilkins. He's
Mhm.
like that's his reflection episode on the Coco Donut he just did. And he said something in the line of like, sure, will he do it again? Is he okay to do the 250 miles just for once? And have that mental kind of like peace to himself that he's only okay to do once. And he's okay with that because that race is unique and it carries that kind of like special memory in his heart. Not just because of physical,
Mhm.
it's challenging to do it again.
Oh
It's
yeah,
because he's okay to just experience that for once in that life. And
yeah,
it's important to realize that in a lot for a lot of things in our life, we can try to experience many, many, many times, but it's also okay for us just to say no to do it for the second time and
yes,
be okay for us to just do it once.
yeah. Yeah, I should have done that with the Cut 112, but I had to fucking try it again. Should have known better. But no, you're right. And I think there's also something to be said for uh quitting while you're still having fun sometimes, like sometimes you need to take time away from something. And I think that that's kind of what, you need to take some time and get some reflection. And I think that's what the 90 days of stepping away from the podcast has done. Hopefully we'll see how it goes moving forward, but it, so far so good. We kind of thought about like, what are the things that we really, that are most important to us and that we want to, try to, what's it all about? So I did have a question, something that kind of, as I was thinking about our conversation coming up and stuff like that. I know lately there's been a lot of discussion and focus put on relations between the US and China. And I just wondered, like, if you've experienced any changes in your life as a result of that, and kind of maybe what that feels like, if they're, if that's had any impact or anything like that.
I think like in every days we hear so much like noise or everywhere on the media, on the news. And then like people trying to say, okay, this is what, and sometimes maybe I feel like maybe I'm still naive in the sense of like, I feel like the government and the people are still different, right? And from a political standpoint, the media will portray the government in certain ways and trying to sort of say, okay, this is what this is US stand for, this is what China stand for. But sure, I understand from a government perspective, but it doesn't really represent the people, right? And every day I'm having a conversation with you right now, and we can still talk about so much about life, about relationship, about running, and none of this is related to like politics, right? And I think it's not that we deliberately avoid politics. It's that a lot of things, if we just focus on like the shared commons and hobbies and what we feel as human,
yes,
we can just have a conversation without overthinking it.
100%, right? Yeah.
But going back to what you said in terms of like, do I notice about the tension? I definitely feel like people are paying attention to it because it's all over the news, right? It's impacting everyone's life. Think about all the manufacturers in China, why people will be losing job. And then here, in the States, we're thinking about maybe would that be a recession even, right? People were facing even more expensive stuff, right? That would be consequences as there will be consequences from these kind of political things going on. As myself, I think being a Chinese American living in the States, I think maybe I'm still living the bubble because I'm in New York City. It's very different from other parts, but I travel too, right? I travel East Coast, I go to West, I go to Midwest as well. I still want to say like this is something what I said in the beginning of the podcast is it's similar to Baltimore. Like a lot of people say, oh, they give Baltimore a bad rap, but then how many of them actually living in Baltimore?
Yeah,
they have neighbors, they have friends from Baltimore, right? So same way is I think we just got to sort of talk to people, and it's okay to have different opinions, right? It's okay because China and the US being two of the biggest kind of sort of economics bodies in the world, these two countries are so different from a political standpoint, from a system perspective, right? It's okay to be different.
Yeah.
But it's important for us to sit down and have a conversation and be okay with the differences.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the important part.
But that's where it seems to be. And it's, and I know that this is not a unique thing between Chinese people and American people. Like, right? Yeah. These days, it seems like you can't fucking talk to anybody. Like it's difficult to talk to anybody about politics. I mean, maybe
that's what's changed. I feel like that's what's being changed because when I first came to the States, and that was like, more than 15 years ago, it was like, I feel like people are more relaxed, talk about this kind of stuff. And now it's almost become like a little bit more and more sensitive. You sort of like need to be, sort of like, okay, I know this guy, so we can talk about this, right? Otherwise, I don't know. Like people sort of shy away from that conversation.
Well, it's like that, but then it's also to the point where the idea of, the ideas being put out there and the stances being taken are just so so ridiculous on both sides, on both sides. And right now I know there's somebody listening who's like, oh, fuck art, man. He's like, whatever, he's off it. But like, it's like, I think now that I'm retired, I have a little bit more time to pay attention to the politics and to look into it. And so I've just been trying to find that common ground, that common ground, because I know that it is not 100%, I mean, I think people have to vote when they vote, and you choose one party or the other party, but like in a conversation,
but it's not working the same way in China.
Like
right?
you said,
so,
we should be able to say like, you know what, I don't like most of what this person said, but I think that this part makes sense to me, assuming that that's sincere, but people won't even do that. And that's like,
that's how you cannot have a conversation. Right?
So I'm hoping that people, cause like this idea of like that we're gonna like yell each other into the corner or like convince people of how right we are, because there's, it's just not gonna, I don't think it's, I doubt seriously that's going to happen. So I'm hoping that like, and there's people out there who are saying, Art, you're naive. People are getting shot all over the place every day in New York City once it's dark and all that stuff. But there's, I think that people have to, ideally people are going to find a common ground through, through something, even if it's the most ridiculous thing that you can find to find the common ground. I think once you do that and acknowledge that sincerely, it kind of like, it does feel good to have that. So,
and it's important to feel good.
If they, to feel good and to find like a, especially if you're going to try to like, if you're intent on changing somebody else's mind, I think that you have to start with some common ground somewhere. Otherwise it's like, your guy's wrong, my guy's right. Your guy's doing this and why, and which may or may not be true on either side, so
the truth is usually in the middle, right? So
I would hope so. So so I don't know, I hope that people out there are finding some middle ground with with their friends and with their neighbors. And I think that's probably a good place to start that, that process of moving forward there. And maybe give that a try, like if whatever, or you cannot listen to me, that's fine, because I'm definitely not here to talk about politics, because like, I don't know if my opinion matters all that much on it. But I can say though, Lynn, I really appreciate the time that you spent tonight, and
pleasure's all mine.
Really great to learn a little bit more about you. So happy to get such a great episode out in in our opinion. Paddle our own douche canoe here.
It's my first podcast, so I'm a podcast virgin.
Sure it is, Lynn. I'm not buying that shit. Okay. So let's see. I want to just ask you, do you have any other things coming up that that you're looking at right now as far as running goals or races or anything on the calendar that you want to talk about or anything, or no?
No, I'll be running JFK 50 this year. and I'm pretty excited about it. It's historical race, and I'm running with Doug again for JFK, which will be fun.
Very good.
I actually have a question for you, R.
Yeah.
Does it mean Cultra is back now?
Yeah, as of tonight, right?
Nice.
So, as of today, yes. Yeah, I
amazing.
don't think that Cultra ever went anywhere. I think we just kind of paused, and
Mhm.
you know, in another 7 years, you'll recognize us. But you know, as we said, time goes on. So, yeah, we'll see. You know, we're gonna take it a mile at a time, or mile and a half at a time.
Happened. Exactly.
So, Lynn, thank you again for joining us. To all of our listeners out there, if you've made it this far, of course, seek professional help, and we will see you all in a mile.
And a mile and a half.
All right. All right.